Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Hello and welcome to this week's Countryside. I'm Simon Clark.
And I'm Kiri Kermode.
And that time of year, Kiri, I've had my hair cut. You haven't.
Nope.
But the sheep on the Isle of Man are, and we talked to, you talked to one of the best on the island.
That's right. Young farmer Daniel Creer took up shearing contracting just after he left school, and he goes off to New Zealand to shear and the local shearing circuits here in Britain. And I caught up with him to talk about the New Zealand World Championships and the local shearing circuit here in the Isle of Man.
Yeah, and we talk about, also I talked to Jerry Chalk, who's a seed exporter importer with his son Alan here on the Isle of Man, and they're exporting the Fabia beans, which have got such nutritional value now. We'll hear about it in the programme. And also the local chip shops as well, using a lot of the marrow fat peas that are brought and harvested here on the Isle of Man. So we talked to him. And also Jen Adams, the Education and Outreach Officer for the Manx Whale and Dolphin Watch. She was doing a presentation in front of an audience in Sulby to just enlighten them and try and educate them on the spotting the different types of dolphins and whales that are around the Manx waters. So that's all in this week's Countryside.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
It's yet another busy season here on the Isle of Man for sheep farmers. This time it's sheep shearing. I went along to speak to local contractor Daniel Creer to talk about the season ahead of him.
Well, my family's always been sheep farmers. Grandad has always had sheep, and then my dad was a shearer, and my Auntie Kate was a shearer, and then we've had Kiwis over for certainly 20 years, I think now. We've had Kiwis coming over to help with the shearing, so on the basis of that, as I was growing up, through school holidays, be helping a bit, doing bits of wrapping and stuff, and then you just start shearing, and sort of went on from that.
And do you enjoy it? Because obviously it's very physical.
Yeah, no, I do enjoy it. The start of the season can sometimes be a bit harder. But once you get into it, after sort of a week or so, you're away with it, and it's just like anything else. If you're doing it all the time, it's no bother to you, really.
And how do you manage with the Manx weather? Obviously, it's been a lovely spell so far. Have you managed to get many sheep clipped out of the way?
Well, no, not so far, really. We were just getting started, and then we had this sort of 2 days of rain, but it has been a lovely spell. It's just one of those things you've got to manage if you can. You've got some people have got sheds and will put the sheep in, so when there's a wet day coming up, you try and get something in, but once you've ran through all of them, well, there's only so much you can do. If you get a real rainy season, it just drags on a bit is all.
Obviously, it's a very seasonal job. Everyone will be wanting you all at the same time, because when the heat comes, it is essential to get the wool off the sheep.
Well, it's not too bad over here. Yeah, there is a bit of people wanting you at the same time, but people have been similar sort of times year on year. You've got the sort of the same people going around the same times, and as a rule of thumb, the north of the island tends to go first because it tends to be a bit hotter and drier up there and more fly, and then you sort of go south in the middle of the island, and then you finish up on the hills. So there's a rhythm to it, and that sort of works out not too bad.
Obviously, there's a welfare aspect to getting the sheep sheared earliest in the season. Is that a big pressure on you guys?
It varies season to season. If it's a colder season, there's not so much pressure on you. And again, if it's a dry season, there's not too much fly about. It's when you get the warm, muggy weather, you tend to have people crying out for you to come, and you just got to fit them in as quick as you can and get them done. It's usually not too bad because most farmers are aware of it and tend to keep the animals clean, and so you're not got too much of a pressure on it. But it's just something that has to be borne in mind, and they've all got to have the wool off them anyway, because otherwise there's other aspects to it too. So
here on the Isle of Man, what will be a busy day for you? Per hour, is it one sheep a minute? How does it work?
We're probably aiming for around the 40-50 an hour. Sort of myself and Kieran Jones will probably be aiming for somewhere around that 40 odd an hour-ish. Bit more on the better sheep and a bit less on the bigger sheep, but I sort of try and run it on 250 to 300 a person a day, roughly. It does change with the sheep. The bigger texels and stuff do take a bit longer. The smaller sheep are a bit less, but the biggest limiter really on getting the sheep done is moves. The actual shearing doesn't tend to be too bad, and you can, if you're in one place all day, you can get a lot more sheep out than if you've got to go to 2 or 3 different farms. But then, due to the size of the Isle of Man and the farms on the Isle of Man, this is just the way it is.
And obviously you take off to New Zealand most seasons. How does it differ between here and there?
It's a lot more regimented over there. Well, maybe not regimented. It's a lot more. It's a lot more on the time. Most of the South Island where I've been working, you start at 7 o'clock. Then you do 2 hours, you have half an hour off, you do 2 hours, an hour off for lunch, or 3/4 of an hour, depending on where you are and everything. Then you have to do another 2 hours, half an hour and 2 hours, and you finish. So your day's only ever 7 till 5. Alright, you might have to get up at 5 to travel to the place, but you're back for 6 o'clock, so you can get your stuff done and into bed in reasonable time. Whereas on the Isle of Man, you're not tend to get started before, well, 8 certainly, usually more like 9, and then you could be going till 9 o'clock at night. So it's a lot different. And then also in New Zealand, it's all pretty much every farm has a shearing shed, so all you're taking with you is your handpiece and your comb and cutters. Whereas over here you take your shearing trailer and generator and machines and everything, so you got half an hour set up every time you pull up to a place, and every time you move, half an hour to take down as well.
So is preparation the key? Because obviously you've got the clippers to grind down, make sure they're sharp, and everything has got to be spot on.
Yeah, certainly a lot of it is gear. Well, it's quite a bit of work involved in getting your pattern for shearing to get the skill to do it. But once you've got the pattern down, your next limiter is gear, and the better your gear is ground, the more sheep you can do. So gear is definitely a big part of it, and sort of the more experienced you are, the more you learn about your gear, and the better you can get it to go.
And how do you find the sheep will react to you? Obviously you do it day in, day out, compared to a beginner. Do they wriggle? Do they try and get up and run away?
They certainly sit a lot better for myself than they do for a beginner, but a lot of that is just down to your position and how you hold them, and just also a bit of confidence too. Sheep, like any animal, can pick up when you're nervous or whatever, and they will give you a run for your money if they can.
So it's quite a stressless job then, really, for the sheep if you have an experienced shearer to take the wool off them?
Yes, it's over within a minute. The way the modern shearing technique is, it stops them from wriggling, and it also minimises the stress on them. Because they can't struggle, there is less stress there, and it's designed to get the wool off as quickly and painlessly for both the shearer and the sheep. Because you've got to remember that a lot of the sheep are sort of 80 or 90 kilos, so it's a lot of weight to be hauling around, especially if they are stressed out and trying to escape.
And how are you seeing the numbers of sheep around the Isle of Man? Are they altering much?
But I would say they've been fairly static. Certainly, well, there's certainly less around than when I was growing up, but I would say since I took the run on, probably the last 7 or 8 years, they've been fairly static. There has been a slight dip this last year or two, with 1 or 2 bigger fellas pulling out, but it's hard to say at this point whether that trend will continue or whether it'll reverse with some new people coming in. I don't think there's been any massive changes, but with the uncertainty at the minute, it's hard to say whether in 5 years' time there will be any sheep on the Isle of Man.
I see that in New Zealand they only have 4 breeds of sheep compared to the Isle of Man.
That's not entirely true, but yeah, there probably is sort of 4 or 5 main breeds. There's a lot of Romneys and Romney Marine, and then Merinos. But there is getting more and more mixes about, because there's a lot of mixes off the Romneys. You've got your Perrendales and you've got your other breeds, and now there's getting a lot of Texel crosses and stuff about. And even the Romney and Merino over there have changed. They've become a lot more open because they've gone more away from the wool, more towards the meat, and just to make it easier to shear them as well.
While you were in New Zealand, you also took part in the Golden Shears, the World Championships. How did you find that? It
was amazing, really. It was extremely well ran. It was quite an incredible setup in the side of a stadium. Yeah, it was incredible, really. There was over 30 odd countries involved, and most of them had sort of at least 2 shearers in. So, well, you're only allowed 2 shearers, 2 competitors in each category, but most of them had 2 machine shearers. So it was really impressive.
So going from such a small place here in the Isle of Man to basically the capital of shearing in New Zealand, what an experience.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. It was we were very lucky to have gone there, myself and Kieran, and it was quite incredible. and the competition was very fierce. We've been to the one previous in Ireland a couple of years back, and the competition was a lot tougher down in New Zealand this year than it had been in Ireland.
But they see shearing as a full industry in the Southern Hemisphere.
You can work all year round as a shearer near enough in New Zealand, and certainly if you go between Australia and New Zealand you can work all year round. So it is a much bigger industry over there, and there's also a lot more sheep per person over there. So it is just a lot bigger, and they also treat it like a sport as well, which sort of pushes it on a lot.
So how did you feel in the competition? Were you nervous?
Yeah, it was quite nervous. I can't remember how many people there was in there, but there was you're up in front of 4,000 or 5,000 people at least every day, so it was quite an incredible thing. And certainly I didn't make any of the finals, but the finals nights were incredibly packed out, and it was some atmosphere in there as well. It was a full netball and basketball stadium, and sort of on the finals night they had the 3 stands were all full, plus the netball court / basketball court was all full of chairs as well, and the 3 sides and the floor was all full of people watching.
So did you have to do anything to get ready for this competition, because obviously you were coming up against some of the world's best?
Yes, we'd gone out to New Zealand this last year. I hadn't been out for a few years, so that was the main reason for going out this last year, was to get some shearing in before the World Champs and to compete in several shows before as well, because they have quite a comprehensive circuit over there. So I managed to do 4 or 5 shows before the Worlds, which was a nice run in, and then we did a shearing course or 2 as well to improve our show shearing. So
will you take part in any of the ones coming up in Britain this summer?
Yes, I'm hoping to. All depends a bit on how everything goes over here with the season. If we get good weather and everything's going well, I'm hoping to do as many as I can, but I'll certainly be doing the Royal Welsh and potentially the Highland, but I wouldn't mind doing a few more this year than I have done previously. So, but again, if the weather's not very good over here and we're trying to catch up, I can't really afford to take the time off, so it all depends on how the season goes.
That was Daniel Creer, local sheep shearer.
Time to get the old coat off them now, though, isn't it? It's been a bit of a warm spell, but Danny's one of the best, but it's a tough old job. You've done it, haven't you?
Oh, certainly. It's back-breaking, and once you've been there for hours on end, some of these sheep on the Isle of Man are fine girls, and they're big, up to 80, 90 kilos, some of them, and to be doing that physical task. But it's needed. The sun's out now, so it's time to get them all done.
Tough to get the old grease off your hands too, isn't it?
That's it. The lanolin can sting sometimes. You get some of the old gorse poked in you, and it stings, but a tough job.
Don't want to be going around with wool under your fingernails, do you?
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
Well, the Manx Whale and Dolphin Watch do a superb job around the Isle of Man, and I went to Sulby to catch up with Jen Adams, who is the Education and Outreach Officer for the Manx Whale and Dolphin Watch. She was there doing a presentation, and I got her to explain what it was all about.
So today we're training up a team of land-based surveyors. So these are people that we get together to train how to do surveys of whales, dolphins, porpoises and basking sharks from the coastline.
Can't be as easy as it seems, is it? Or is it just little tips that make it so much easier to distinguish what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's not easy if you don't know what you're looking at. So the first half of the workshop today is we train people how to recognise the different species that you see in Manx waters through their physical characteristics and their behaviour, so they can get a good idea of what it is that they're seeing. So there's a lot of hints and tips of sort of colour and head shape and fin shape and that kind of thing.
Just to refresh people's minds, what sort of animals have we got around, or mammals, sea creatures that are particularly of interest?
So we've got 5 species of cetacean, so that's whales, dolphins, porpoises. We get harbour porpoise, Risso's dolphins, bottlenose dolphins, common dolphins and minke whale. The ones that we're particularly interested in are the Risso's dolphins, because they're pretty understudied in most parts of the world and quite hard to spot. But around the Isle of Man we've got a really special inshore population of them here.
Why are they so difficult to spot? Are they quite shy compared to other ones?
No, they're usually difficult to spot in other parts of the world, but only because they're usually seen in deep waters. So these are water that's off continental shelves, about 2,000 metres deep, so people have to get out on a boat and go miles out to sea to see them. But we can see them here close inshore off the Isle of Man because they're in our inshore shallow waters, but we don't know why. So they're a really interesting species to sort of monitor and get an idea of what they're doing here.
It must be strange to figure that one out with the 2,000 metres depth. It's quite deep, isn't it? And the banks around the coastal waters of the Isle of Man won't be nowhere near that.
No, I mean, it gets as deep as 120 metres here off the west coast, about 6 miles out. But we often see them here, going through the Sound, where it's only up to 30 metres deep. In really shallow waters here, which is almost unheard of sort of in other parts of the world.
The basking sharks, I've heard one or two stories that people have mistaken them for Russian submarines and things like that over years.
I'm not surprised. I mean, they're pretty mega. They can grow to about 11 metres long. They're big, big fish. And you'll see them sort of steadily just cruising along the surface with their big dorsal fins sticking up out the water.
But they're all fascinating creatures, aren't they? Some of them like to play, some sort of mind their own business in a way.
Yeah, I mean, the Risso's dolphins, the bottlenose dolphins as well, they exhibit a really wide range of behaviour. We see bottlenose dolphins close inshore on the east coast during the winter, and they do all sorts of leaping and somersaults and barrel riding with boats, and they're really active, playful dolphin.
But I mean, it must be strange where the Isle of Man coastal waters. I mean, what's attracting them here? Because surely is it a stopover place, or is it just, I don't know, what is it?
We do get dolphins sort of passing through on the way to Ireland or to Scotland, but we also have ones that come back to Manx waters sort of every year that we recognise. There's a lot of good feeding around here. We're lucky because there isn't really much in the way of threats to marine mammals around the Isle of Man. The fishing industry is pretty nice and clean. There's a lot of food, not too much boat disturbance. That's why they're here. It's nice and safe. And we often see young, like calves, baby dolphins here with their mothers. So that's a really good sign they're either breeding in Manx waters or very near to Manx waters.
Well, you've got a few interested members in the audience today, taking it all in. I mean, hopefully they're going to come away wiser and be able to maybe pass that knowledge on to other people too.
I hope so, yeah. I mean, a big part of what we do is raising public awareness, and so people know that you can see whales, dolphins around the Isle of Man. You don't have to go on holiday to the tropics to see them, but we can see some amazing things from our very own doorstep.
And do people take pictures of them and send them in to you? Can they do that?
Yeah, you can do, yeah. We encourage anyone who sees one of these animals to report their sightings to us and send pictures in if they've got them. So they can either send it through to our website or find Manx Whale and Dolphin Watch on Facebook and send it to our Facebook page, or any way you can get in touch with us, then do.
Is there any way we can encourage these animals to stay here over the years, or is it just potluck, or we just keep doing what we're doing and hope they come back?
You keep doing what you're doing, monitoring them, making sure the population's stable and healthy. As long as we as a Manx community ensure that our waters are always clean, we don't chuck litter on our beaches and we clear up after ourselves, then hopefully the waters will be nice and clean and a really good, stable environment for these animals.
Yeah, are we going the right direction in that? I mean, we're sorting out the sewerage system slowly. I mean, the beach buddies are doing a fantastic job. Is that all helping?
Oh, it's definitely all helping. There's been a massive change, even over the sort of last 10 years. So we're doing our bit, raising awareness that you can see these animals. Beach buddies are out there cleaning the beaches, doing amazing things. It's definitely going in the right direction, people working together as a community to help the marine environment.
Well, they've not finished for the day yet. You've got to put your headmaster's hat on and go back in and tell them some more.
Next up, we're training them how to actually do a survey from land and how to fill out all the forms and using a compass and all the sort of techie stuff.
Yeah, is it easy with mobile technology, with the grid references and things? Or?
Well, we're a bit old school. We use paper-based forms and handheld compasses and stuff, but that works for us.
Yeah, well, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Well, a very enthusiastic and knowledgeable member of the Isle of Man Whale and Dolphin Watch, Jen Adams, who is the Education and Outreach Officer for them there, explaining about the presentations she was doing and educating people and just giving them a bit of advice. And she had pictures and slides up there of the different types of whales and dolphins we have around the Isle of Man. And there was a few people there very interested to help out in it, which is good to see, isn't it?
Sometimes you spot something out at sea and you don't realise what it is, and to have educational sessions like this is quite important, really. So then we can obviously log what we've spotted as well and be a bit more accurate.
Yeah, because everyone, can help. You get a lot of people texting in or ringing when we're doing programmes on the radio here as well, and saying, "Oh, there's a load of dolphins off the head at Mackled Head or whatever the coast it is." So, at least people are spreading the word and noticing them now, aren't they?
Well, that's it. And it's a lovely sight. It's quite a rare sight, but if you happen to be out there and you've got your camera, it's a real spectacle.
Must be all the beans and peas out in the sea that's attracting them. You're wondering what I'm talking about, aren't you? Well, to explain more about fabia beans, marrowfat beans, and seeds in general, I spoke to one of the importers and exporters of seeds here on the Isle of Man, Jerry Chalk.
We are looking to buy peas and beans that are grown on the island. We're particularly interested in Victor Fabia beans, spring beans, which we buy and export, send down to Wisbeach, and they're cleaned and packed in 25 kilo bags, and then they're exported to either Egypt or the Sudan, where they're eaten by the local people. When dry, they're 27% protein and are gluten-free. And we're trying to encourage people on the island to eat them. And most people say, "What, beans? I don't eat beans." But in actual fact, a lot of the vegetarians and vegans love them. And then we also have grown a very small quantity of marrowfat peas, which are for mushy peas, and we supply the 2 fish and chip shops in Ramsey and 2 in Peel, and also a lady that makes Betty's pies. She's just started using them, and she's highly delighted with them. We also buy other peas, a variety called crackerjack in particular. We buy those and export them to Northallerton. They're to micronised food products, and they are then micronised, sort of cook them and roll them, and they're used for animal feed. Unlike the marrowfat peas, the crackerjack peas won't in actual fact absorb moisture.
But it's interesting about the work that you're doing is actually trying to encourage the growth of these crops on the Isle of Man and to keep them here and actually use them. And it's great to see some of the chip shops actually, instead of buying the big massive tins of them that you get, actually using them.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. They 2 in Ramsey, before we started with the peas, were buying imported peas from across. We brought a couple of tons over last year.
But it's one of these things as well. There's a lot of people in the world now change to the vegetarian style of life, the vegan style in particular. Also the gluten-free thing, which a lot of these products are actually suiting. Is that? Have you seen a growth in that popularity?
Yeah. I think it was this spring they had a vegetarian fest down in Laxey. We went down there with some peas, and we sold 1 or 2 lots, and there was an awful lot of interest by people saying, "Yeah, well, we could buy these." I mean, these beans are sold by Doc Price at the farmers market, Terry in the spice shop in Parliament Street, and Dave Brew is down at on the way to St Jude's. He sells all the eggs. There are 80,000 people on the island. If we could get 40,000 to eat a kilo a year, that's 40 tonne of beans, which saves exports. The money goes back into the economy, and
Are you getting a lot of feedback and a lot of interest from local farmers wanting to change to some other products?
Well, they're already growing the spring beans. You have to be a bit careful that they have to be sprayed to kill the Berkelid beetle, which lays its eggs in the bean flour, and then when the beans develop, they actually burrow a hole out. So they don't want them with holes in. But when you go and spoke to the local farmers until recently, people don't eat those. They're cattle feed. But it's there. So it's very interesting, and it's a challenge to get people involved.
What about the Fabia beans here. I mean, they're going out to Egypt, places like that. Can't
Too
they
hot.
grow them themselves there?
Well, it's basically too hot.
So the Manx weather has its uses.
Oh yeah, because they want some water to grow, and it's not too hot for them. I mean, if we can get, a lot of the farmers here struggle because of paying very high freight costs to get anything in to import it. I mean, we sell pea seed and bean seed and cereal seeds, which are imported, and we get them shipped into Ramsey, and the local farmers pick them up. They're in half-ton bags. That works very well.
But you're trying to encourage a lot of them to grow them here and make it easier and help the economy, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. If you're growing them for seed, they have to be crop inspected by a licensed crop inspector to make sure that they meet the standards, and they need to be a minimum of 85% germination. Well, a lot of these peas and beans are over 90% germination grown on the island, but you have to get them certified.
Do you need special machinery or just to harvest them?
Yeah, well, they're combined with a combine, and provided the combine driver set it up, you get most of the trash taken out of them.
So a lot of the modern combines can swap their settings and things, can't they, with the push of a button?
Yeah.
And they can do the Fabia beans and the peas?
Yes, yeah. I mean, these peas will only grow about that high, whereas the Fabia beans will be up about 5 feet.
Really?
Yeah. And if they're much taller than that, I'm only 5'3". You can't see me in them.
So all in all, it sounds a great thing, and we put the word out to try and encourage this on the Isle of Man, because, let's say, it's a very popular way of eating with a lot of people these days.
Very much so, yeah. I mean, I was told yesterday of a restaurant in Douglas, and I've not been yet, contacted the gentleman who owns it, but apparently he's looking to use as much Manx produce as he can. He does a lot of vegan and vegetarian dishes. So he's next on the list to call.
There we are, Jerry Chalk there explaining about the different types of beans and seeds and peas that are available, and it's quite interesting. It's just fantastic that people on the Isle of Man are using the marrow fat peas, in the chip shops and things now, Kerry, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful to see local produce being used, and especially mushy peas is a real favourite. So, yeah, local growers and producers, and it's just working, isn't it? It's a real chain effect.
Yeah, it's going to be chips, cheese, gravy and mushy peas the next one, isn't it? You can get, if you want more information, you can get in touch with Jerry or Alan on 880312, or the email address is herbsbyus, which is HERBSBUYUS @manx.net to find out more. Well, we'll leave it there for this week's Countryside. We'll be back next week with a special programme on Countryside, a Calf of Man special from our trip. And very exciting we will be to bring that to you as well, Kerry.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
There we are. Fabia beans, dolphins and sheep shearing. Good old combination again on this week's Countryside. Fascinating, isn't it? We talk about it every so many weeks, that we're so lucky, aren't we, to be able to go and find out more about these, because we know a bit about it, but to hear people who have been really dedicated their life to this sort of thing talk about this, it's very educational.
We're very lucky, aren't we, really, here on the Isle of Man, to have the contacts and have these professional people on our doorstep.
Yes, indeed. But we'll leave it there for this week's Countryside. So from me, Simon Clark.
And me, Kerry Kermit.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin, or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.